broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everyone. How's everyone doing today? Okay, so today we are going to have it's going to be kind of a brief discussion. We've talked about version 9 in 2 or 3 other webinars. So this is just a kind of few things I assembled based on questions people were asking and things that I've seen personally and stuff like that. So I thought it'd just be good to kind of put them together. And maybe for those of you who've actually gone through the upgrade, you'll have something to contribute that would be really cool as well. So my name is Mitch Milam. You can reach me via email or on Twitter, or connect with me on LinkedIn. All of my webinars are recorded and put up on my YouTube channel. So if you subscribe, you'll get an automatic notification. There's a little, after you subscribe, there's a little bell thing above the subscription button or beside it that will send you an email anytime anything gets added. So go and do that. That'll get you automatic notification. Everybody's muted, of course, and if you need to ask a question, just put it in the question box, or you can just raise your hand with a little hand icon, and you will be, I can unmute you if I see that. So here are the things that, kind of the 4 major things that I've thought of as far as the upgrade goes. So the first is timing, the second is feature set, the third is compatibility, and finally training. So again, this is just my experiences. Everybody's going to have different experiences, but these are just some common things that I've seen that we kind of need to pay attention to based on everything we see. Now, to be quite honest, this is not a ginormous update. It is going to be different because of different things we'll talk about here in a minute, but it's not like going from 2011 to 2013 when we had a major UI change. We do have UI changes, but not to that extent. So in my mind, it's not going to be as traumatic as it could be. So let's talk about timing. So I went and looked this morning on one of my instances, and it looks like August 6th is the farthest date out that you can push your update for the current version. So you can schedule 2 dates, of course. That would be the last. You can ask them to skip this, or you can skip this, evidently. And that's one of the things that you kind of need to figure out based on the other stuff we're going to talk about, because we do have a new release coming. Now, I don't exactly know the time frames of all this stuff, and this webinar is going to be very, and recording thereof is going to be very specific to this date and time, so I should have mentioned that. So this is February 9th, 2018, so if you're watching this 6 months from now, this is probably just a waste of your time. So because everything is really going to be specific to really the next 6 months, I think, for everyone. So we do have a spring release coming. It's probably going to ship within the next 2 or 3 months, I would assume. That is kind of the spring time frame. Unsure what's going to be in it or how it's going to be released, if they're going to do like they normally do, where they put it out into general availability for new customers and then wait a month or so before they start signing up with other customers. It is my understanding, and I don't think anything has changed, that if they come out with a new update and you're still on 8.2, which is the current version of Dynamics 365 for many folks online, if they ship that, then you can go straight from 8.2 to 9.1, which is, I'm assuming, what's going to be the next version. So we don't have to actually do the release that we have available to us right now, which is the one I was showing you in this thing here. So right now, if you schedule your time, you're going to get 9.0. And then again, 9.1 is my assumption of the new version when the spring release happens. And then if we don't update between now and then, your next update cycle should be 9.1 instead of 9.0. So keep that in mind when and if you schedule your update time. So let's talk about feature set. So the biggest thing that you're going to run into, and there are lots of features, again, we cover those in a couple of the other webinars. The biggest thing is they did change the UI for everything. So we have an updated UI, what they call a refresh. So they've changed things. This is what the view looks like. The colors are slightly different. They basically, if you didn't watch the other webinars or you haven't heard, there was a very inconsistent level of fonts spacings of things like that. So they took a lot of time and trouble to kind of consolidate that into having the same typeface. Spacing was kind of consolidated to remove some of the blank spaces that we had for no apparent reason. This is what the record layout looks like. So we're going back to very broad section headers. The tabs like summary and project page or price list haven't changed, anything like that, but just the way the layout is, it's gotten a little bit different. So that's the web UI refresh. We also have the new unified user interface. Now, this is a secondary and future version of the interface that we're going to have in the Dynamics 365 product. So this is a view, as you can see, of active accounts. You'll notice everything is slightly different. If you are using any of the Interactive Service Hub right now, you should be familiar with this interface because it's the same interface. The way it works is, if you look at your applications, which you find under the Dynamics 365 drop down on the upper left-hand corner, you will see several different applications depending on what's inside your system. Anything that ends in the word hub, H-U-B, is going to have the new unified interface. If it just says, say, sales, it's the refreshed user interface. So this is the view, this is the data. So as you can see with the unified interface, we're going back to our tabbed model of old that everybody was really happy with. So that gives us a little bit of real estate back that was taken up by other things. And as you can see, the tabs are now across the top in real tab format, not just this collapsible region. Then we have sections and the other things go with it. We got a little bit more color. And again, the spacing and the colors and the different things have been consolidated. The unified interface is exactly that. This is the interface that will be running everywhere. So if you have a 9.0 interface right now, or instance right now, and you open up the web client, or sorry, the tablet client, you will see the unified interface. In fact, when you open it up, it will actually ask you, you have, in the case of the demo I spun up this morning, I have a field service hub, a project service hub, and a sales hub. And again, that's the new interface. And so I picked which one I wanted to see, and I saw this interface here. Now, the problem with that is not all functionality is on parity between the updated interface and the unified interface. For instance, one thing we found a couple weeks ago, or a little bit more, a friend of mine, is in the unified interface, there's no way to send an email from here. So that kind of defeats the purpose of sending an email from a record, or like even for like a case, things like that. So we've got some little inconsistencies, some feature sets that have not totally been brought forward from one to the other. It is my understanding from the roadmap that they showed us last year when they were preparing for version 9 is they gave us the refresh, and then the unified interface was showing up in mobile first. And then that would be followed by the next release, which would put the unified interface everywhere. So as a side effect of that, what they did is they gave us these hub interfaces, which on the web version are still considered preview. Okay, so that was kind of an interesting thing. I mentioned in one of the other webinars. So this is the way we're going, and I haven't heard anything different. So I'm assuming that when the spring release finally ships, we will have one interface, which is the unified interface for all of the products. And so this is the path that they've been on for like the past 12 to 14 months, whatever it might be. Just a quick reminder of all the deprecated features that will be eliminated from the product at some point in the future. So if you are using any of these features here, you're going to need to learn to live without them or to move to a different thing. Some of these will be kind of painful. Outlook client has been deprecated. That's going to be a big deal. Dialogues could be a big deal for some customers, et cetera, et cetera. So take a look at the deprecation list. I have the first webinar I did on the new feature stuff has some links on the web page that have that, and I'll put that in the show notes of this as well. For developers, lots of neat, fun stuff that's coming out, so just allows us to do more things, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. So compatibility. So first thing, code that you may have. As with any update, what you need to do is you need to make sure that your code will function with the new version, just like you would any update process. So test out all your JavaScript. If you have .NET, any kind of components using .NET, you're going to have to test those out as well. We'll talk about both of those in here in a second. And again, plan for the update. So if you have a sandbox on online, you can upgrade that first, my understanding is, and then you can test everything out on that before you roll it out to production. Pam says they have now said Outlook won't be deprecated anytime soon, from what I've read recently. Yeah, and remember, deprecation means that they're going to take it away sooner or later. Sometimes it's later, and sometimes it's very later. So the idea here is so let's go back to just deprecation. What that means is they will phase it out of the product. They're letting you know well in advance of what things are going to happen so that you can prepare yourself mentally, physically, emotionally, and financially for that change. Sometimes the change is, okay, next version is gone. They do that with the programmatic stuff all the time. Hey, you've got one version to get this out and then it's going away. Some of the other feature stuff, they just, okay, we're taking this out, but it really and truly depends on the level of pain and the level of parity with whatever replaced it, if anything. So we'll talk about that in a minute with the Outlook specifically. Wesley said that they announced they won't be deprecating the Outlook client last weekend due to customer feedback. So I have not seen that, but if somebody can find me a link and stick it in the thing, that would be great, because that's fascinating. Okay, JavaScript, we have new features, new capabilities, and unfortunately a new object model. So this is one of the things where they're changing the way that they are having us organize our code, and that will require code changes. And I had a webinar that talked about that last month, I think it was, maybe in December. So basically, you are going to have to modify your JavaScript sooner or later. So what I would recommend is, as you're maintaining your JavaScript, you might want to make some of the changes that are going to have to happen as far as the way your code is organized and how you're doing functions and things like that. Okay, perfect. Okay, great. Thanks everybody for those notes. I'll put that in my in the notes for this. That's really cool. Anyway, so back to JavaScript. So we are going to have to make changes, and that's everybody, not just you guys. So they're just changing the way that they pass data in and out of functions, and how they reference the object model itself. So that's just going to be a bit of a painful thing to go through, because we're going to have to modify all of our code, because sooner or later it will change. And if you're not anticipating you're ready for the change, it will break stuff. We don't want that. So .NET, when working with the SDK assembly, so those are the DLLs if you write .NET, they're pretty hardcore these days. Is when they come out with a new version, they come out with updated assemblies, those are the only ones that can do that, access that version. So for instance, I found out the hard way. I was using the 8.2 versions of the assemblies and worked fine with the version 9 preview. And then when version 9 general availability hit, it stopped physically connecting. So that caused me to, basically scramble, and I had to update my project. The biggest thing is you have to move to .NET 4.6.2. We were at 4.5.2, so you had to bump up a version. That makes changes to your project, and then you have to recompile using the new assemblies for version 9. The good news is they are mostly compatible with previous versions. Sometimes you'll run into, if you get back as far as like 2011, which is some of the stuff I have to work with still, you'll run into some odd compatibility issues. But for the majority of people, everything works just fine. It's just the way that they talk to the version once they know the version number. So Outlook integration. So evidently it has not been deprecated. So I will need to look that up and see what those say. I see two different articles. one from the blog and one from the doc, so that's pretty cool. And really what the deal is with that is the Outlook app has not been released for version 9. And that's caused a lot of people, a massive amount of concern, because you think about it, whether you have 10 users or 1,000 users or 10,000 users, it's a lot of work to make a change like that. So we're still waiting on the version 9 Outlook app. I thought it was supposed to be available in the late fall, December timeframe. It's still not out. At this point, I'm assuming it may just wait until the spring releases shipped. I don't really know personally, but that's what I'm just making an assumption there. And the biggest problem is it is not the same as the Outlook client is. So it's a big difference there. So, oh yeah, let's see. Brian says it's available in a preview feature. Yeah, that kind of worries me. So we'll see how all this shakes out. Like I said, the Outlook client had, was kind of a pain to manage and install and things like that, but it did work, most of the time. It didn't get along with other add-ins, which is the big problem with any kind of Outlook add-in. But like I said, they've got a lot of work to do to make the Outlook app feature parity to the Outlook client. So it could be a while before that happens. Mobility. So if you're using the Mocha client right now for your mobile app, the way that they have structured the mobile app is, it's, if you don't know, or maybe if you do, it's just a shell or a shim, some people call it. And what that is just a wrapper for the specific operating system that it's working on, that provides the operating system level functionality, whether it be iOS or Windows or Android. So it's a wrapper between the web page information and the actual physical device that you're on. So what happens with that is when you connect to a version 9 system or even version 8, you get the web pages that are specific to the mobile view of the form. We don't have a different form for this. It's just a different view of that form. The way that the unified interface works, and I haven't actually tried it in quite a while, but if you put the window, the browser window into a format not maximized, where you can actually change the width, if you move it far enough to the left to make it narrower, it will actually drop down into the mobile mode of viewing the same form. So that's how it works. It's called a reactive interface. So anyway, so the point is they do have the new interface on mobile, so that's what you're going to see. So it's going to be a little bit of work there to make sure that it's compatible. We do have extra capabilities for JavaScript on mobile that were not available to 8.2, so something good there. But again, this is all testing, so that's the thing you just got to watch out for. Ron asked, does your audience generally turn on trials for clients, do customizations in trial mode, and then pay for a license to go live, or do they buy one license and do customizations? Ron, it's all over the place. So it depends on what's trying to be accomplished. Some people start off with a trial and just flip it, basically finally put their credit card in, after a month or so. But it could be anything. It really depends on the situation. Other people just start off buying it. So there's really no rhyme or reason to any of that stuff. Good question, though. Okay, training. So if you're using mobile, you don't have a decision point. You've got the unified interface. There you go. If you're not using mobile, then you have to make up your mind. What do we want to give the users? Do we want to give them the updated UI or the unified interface? And we're talking again with 9.0, not 9.1. So the problem with this, why this is a decision point, is anytime you give something to users that's different, it confuses users. And as we know, confused users make phone calls, and phone calls are bad, right? So from a corporate level and from an IT level specifically, you're going to need to figure out what do we do? Do we wait for the next version, 9.1, assuming, and then just go with that because it's going to have one interface? Or is there something that we need to take care of right now that will get us to 9.0, and then we'll just have to make up our mind of which one to do? Because if you think about it, the updated UI is slightly different than what we have with 8.2 right now. The unified interface is radically different than what we have right now. And again, it just breeds a little bit of confusion. If the users are mobile users and web users, and you do not use the unified interface on the web client, in other words, not the Sales Hub, for instance, that's what they're going to be using on the mobile client. They're going to be using the Sales Hub on the mobile client and then the updated UI on the web client. That can lead to confusion and mostly irritation because things are different and they're in different places and they act differently. So it's always going to be a big problem there. Yeah, so Ron says, be aware that V9 is the only choice on a trial. That's true. And only Outlook app is the one preview. Yes, that's right. So Outlook app is in a preview, and yeah, version that you have. So like you spin up a brand new trial right now, you're getting version 9. You're not getting anything else. So that's pretty much the way that works. So that's what I've come up with. Does anybody else have anything they want to share? Lanier asks, with dialogues being deprecated, would you mind putting together a webinar on business process flows and mobile task flow? Try these features and they don't appear to be fully cover what you could do with a dialogue. Lanier, they do not cover what you can do with the dialogue. That is the problem with some of these deprecations is dialogue, they were clunky, but they worked. That you could pop, a box up, ask the user for some data, and then go and do something with that data. He's talking about mobile task flows, which I've actually have not played with at all, is what they're using for doing dialogue type things on the mobile/tablet client. Now, here's the thing I do not know nor understand is their path from dialogues to the future. Are they going to be putting task flows into the web client? Again, since we're going to have one single interface, my assumption is yes. If that's the case, then the task flows are probably going to be replacing dialogues. And if that's the case, are they going to update task flows to the functionality level of dialogues? If not, are we going to be working with Flow? So Flow is integrated within version 9. I think I did one of the webinars. We touched on it briefly. And the issue with that is it doesn't behave the same as with a dialogue. So the way that it works is going to be slightly different. So, you're going to have a kind of a feature test there. The other thing is the way dialogues work, the way that I've used them personally, and I've literally done 2 in my entire career, is we asked the user for some information. We took that information, handed it over via 1 or 2 methods to a custom workflow activity, which is a piece of .NET code. And then from there, I did all the work. So. Wayne asks, any news on on-premise? No news whatsoever. So, great question. So if you go back about X number of years, X being whatever it was, what they initially told us is they were going to start doing 2 releases a year, spring and fall. And the first release would always going to be online. The second release would be online and on-premise to catch up. The rationale for that was our corporate customers are telling us it's a pain in the butt to actually update every 6 months. By the time they finish testing, you've got another update. So what they did is they removed the ability to have a choice. So that's what happened with the fall release is we do not have a version 9 for on-prem. We only have a version 8.2, which is Dynamics 365. So following that logic, they skipped that. So I'm assuming that the spring release will be on parity with on-premises and online, but I don't know for sure. That was the initial thing that they came up with. They didn't actually stick to that fully for a couple years there. We actually had, when they came out with an update, it was for everything. And I think that they're going back to the online, then on-prem catch up in the second release. That's what it appears to me. But again, that's just my supposition. I can neither confirm nor deny anything else. Anybody else have anything they want to contribute or ask? Has anybody done anything, run into anything odd with the update if they've done it already? Nobody? Okay. So anyway, Matul asks, is there any tool to upgrade JavaScript changes? No, there's not. I mentioned I thought about taking my JavaScript converter that I wrote go from version 4 to version 2011 and updating it, but the code's too complicated. It wouldn't work. And so at this point, no. So yeah, so it seems like you're good with that. Brian says, seems like mobile may be a step backwards. I don't know. I mean, they're trying to get everything to the same thing. Maps don't work. Haven't found a way to change certain things on the forum. Yeah, I think what they're doing is I think this got caught up in the way that 9 was released. You know, remember 9 was technically the July release that they released in October, and it wouldn't surprise me if some things just quite fell through the cracks. That's probably what happened. Is there a code verification tool for .NET updates? No, it won't work. That's the deal. It's very binary, Lou. It either works or it does not work. Like that's what happened to me. Is like my snapshot tool is my documentation tool. I hadn't updated. Like I said, I verified it worked with the preview version 9, and then I hadn't updated it with some other stuff that I need to put in it because basically people just didn't have version 9. Then all of a sudden I started getting these. Hey, this doesn't work. And I'm getting this error. And I was like, well, that's very odd. And sure enough, I go and connect myself to a version 9 organ it threw this error because it wasn't connecting correctly. And so what had to happen was I had to update to 4.6.2.net, and then I had to add the new assemblies and recompile everything. And I mean, you know, it only took me half an hour to do all that, or an hour, and verify it worked. And I just gave that out. So yeah, so that's the thing. What it is it just doesn't work. So you will not connect to a version 9 for using 8.2. Jerry asks, do you think the spring release will be 10 or 9.x? Jerry, I think it's going to be 9.1. It's going to be the spring release. I can't imagine them throwing out a version 10 because technically that's a major version. Major versions are where they do the deprecations. So I'm just blatantly assuming that it's going to be the version 9.1. But again, I have no clue on that. Karim says, well, existing JavaScript stopped working as soon as they upgrade to version 9. No, nothing at all like that. Again, the changes that they are making is along the same deprecation thing. So everything will work exactly the same as it has been. What you're testing for compatibility is to make sure that they didn't introduce anything that caused your scripts to do something that was unexpected. Okay. So yeah, so you've got time to move them over. Last time this happened, you know, we had a couple of years, quite honestly, to move everything. So yeah, so basically, again, they're just changing the way that the information passed into the function and how you connect to the xrm.page object is what the deal is, because that's the one that controls everything. Everything right now will work perfectly the same. What we're saying is just take a look at the page that has, here's what the deprecation is, here's how you do it now, and then modify your code accordingly. So what all this means is you literally have to go and check a checkbox on every function call from the configuration, and then you have to actually modify the function itself to accept a parameter and then use that from there. It's just pretty much about 3 steps. Yeah, Lee just kind of said that. Yep. Ron asks, any information on the plan to eliminate the enterprise and business naming and move to a base license and add functionality apps? I haven't seen anything lately. You know, they kind of waffled on that back and forth. I don't even know what the real thing is right now. So, you know, they said the business app was going away, and then it wasn't going away, and now I don't even know. I have not heard the business app mentioned in quite some period of time. So at this point, I have no clue what the deal is. Anything else? Nope. Okay, well, thanks, everybody. I really appreciate you showing up today, and have a lovely weekend, and we'll be talking to you later. Thanks.